personal, regarding their journey with psilocybin, as far as it relates to their healing. And then I have a few questions, but I'm going to allow each person about 10 minutes to kind of just, get really real in here. So let's just hold some space for them. This is a safe place for all of us to come forward with our stories. And it takes a lot of bravery to do this in this fashion. So thank you so much. And then please also introduce yourselves, and then you have 10 minutes each, and then we'll get into a round table of questions.
Okay, my name is Chris. I have been prescribed psilocybin as well as LSD by my doctors. I am in stage, and that's one of the big definitions of being able to use it according to the federal bill, is that you are truly end stage, terminal. And I've tried over 32 years, probably 12 to 16 different antidepressants, none of which ever really worked. And a year ago, my doctors threw up their hands and said, well, your things are looking really, really bad already, so why don't we go ahead and try psilocybin and potentially LSD to alleviate some of the end-of-life anxiety and intense depression and things that I was having. And it's been just over a year that I've been on them, and I typically microdose daily, and it keeps me at a much more even keel, better headspace, so to speak. I don't go into panics and rages as much as I used to. A gentleman earlier asked about varieties. That's a really very important question, because there are certainly various varieties. For example, I'm going to use a kind of story with medical marijuana, in that sativa works very, very well, for example, on my brain tumors, whereas indica works very, very well on my spinal tumors. I don't know why, it just works that way. It's the same thing with psilocybin mushrooms in particular. There are thousands of varieties. They grow pretty much everywhere on Earth, including Siberia. Here's just a little aside, historical aside. A shaman is actually someone, long ago, they were from Siberia, and that's where the name comes from, shaman. And they did the research on this, and they found out that these shamans in Siberia had access to psilocybin mushrooms. So they even grow in places such as Siberia. I grew up in the deep south. They grew all over the cow fields where I grew up. It was not unusual to find them all over the place, so to speak. But with regards to using them medicinally, there are goods and bads out there. Since there's no books out there on things like this, for me, I have, as I said, life anxiety, CPTSD, complex PTSD, because I've had numerous instances occur of really, really bad stuff. I woke up during surgery when they were cutting my arm off, different things like that that were extremely traumatic. Two types that I have found, I've probably tried 14 to 16 in this year to try to determine what would work best for depression, end-of-life anxiety, and complex PTSD. And the two that I've found that seem to work best are called Burma Yangon and Chitwan Nepalese. I don't know why, but they seem to be the ones that work. And I don't want to speak too long. I'd like to open it up more to questions that people might have, because really I found that that's the best way to address people. I don't do slides. I don't have a computer head anymore, so to speak. I was in computers when I worked, but I've been retired now since I was 42. I'm 55 now, so I've been retired 13 years, and I was told I would be dead 10 years ago. I was supposed to have been dead. So I'm still cruising along. I have 2 adult children that are both at school and college. One's already graduated. And I use them as my barometer, so to speak. Like, am I doing better, same, worse, as well as my wife? And all of them, first of all, when I first began this process, they could not believe. They're like, okay, medical marijuana's not enough. Come on, man. You're really stepping over now. Now they would say, there's no way you should ever take this away from him. He's not the same person when he is off this medication. For the first time in 32 years, for the past year, I have not needed any antidepressants. I don't know why. A lot of people ask me, does it work well in pain? I don't really know that it works that well in pain for me, with the intense pain. However, with that caveat, I've gone since 2017 from 600 milligrams of opioids a day, which is about 5 times what a heroin addict uses in a day, down to 7.5 milligrams tops a day of opioids. So it's doing something. I don't know what. And my doctors are just amazed, and they're using me as a case study. And I've allowed them to present that case study to the American Medical Association upon my death. Before that, they need to study me. You know, what if I change? I'm not saying this is a panacea and it's everything, but for me, it works. And I use it daily. I microdose. A lot of people ask, what's a microdose? I typically take about 500 milligrams, which is, as alluded to earlier, 1.5 to 3 grams is that's a trip. 500 milligrams is less than a cup of coffee. So I can do everything I need to do. My eyes don't dilate. I can go out, I can drive my car, I have my therapy dog with me everywhere I go. We get out and do our things. Usually when I go to see my psychiatrist, I actually make it a point of being on the mushrooms so that he can see what it is really like, because he's truly fascinated as well. He cannot believe that this is occurring. And many people I ask, how do you get on it? It's not so easy to get where I am to be on it, to be quite frank, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. Basically, the answer is you have to have come near death about 5 times, and they say, wow, we can't believe what we're seeing growing inside of your body and that you're still alive. Then you could probably get on the end of life, end stage use of psilocybin according to the federal government. But I think it should be available to anyone, not just people that are sick. Questions? Yes?
Do you ever have any intense allergic reactions to the strains that you've tried?
No. Have I ever had any bad trips? Certainly. Not in the past year that I've been doing them medicinally. As I said, I grew up down south. We used to pick them in the fields when I was a teenager. So I did them back then just as a fun thing. You know, we didn't have any money. I don't have money for beer or anything like that. You know, so we just took mushrooms. And when you do that, if you do it enough times, you're going to have a bad trip. But as far as allergic reactions, no. I do know one of my friends that had very, very severe allergic reactions to mushrooms. And when that was the case, it was every mushroom. It did not matter. Every single time he tried it, I think 3 times, had to go to the emergency room every time, and it wasn't a bad trip. It was truly allergic reaction. So I know they do exist, but I don't think they're very often.
I also want to say thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Yes.
Can I ask you from your personal perspective?
Yes.
What's your view on you're still with us.
Yes.
You said they told you that you were supposed to be gone 10 years ago.
Correct.
You're still here. You're sharing your story with us, and you look like you still got some more life to live.
I think so.
So, from your perspective, do you feel the psychedelic compounds have literally altered your genetics and have made a difference? Or is it...
They have altered the flow of blood to areas in my brain. Here's how I understand it, and this is what I feel. So a little bit of reading and a little bit of in my own head. What I believe happens, they used to think that, oh, well, maybe psychedelics work because they pump your brain up with blood. It's actually exactly the opposite. It slows your blood supply to your brain. It lowers your blood pressure. And when the blood supply to your brain slows, now this is a layman talking, just having read. When it slows, your blood supply goes like it's on an interstate through your main arteries, so to speak. There's a lot of areas in your brain where blood does not generally flow. It kind of sits there a bit, so to speak, not as an interstate, as many vehicles on it. When you use mushrooms and when that blood supply slows down, those byways open up and blood supply flows more through them. And now scientists are saying that's the trip. That is what is getting the different feeling and effect. So to answer your question, I absolutely feel that genetically, biologically, whatever you want to call it, something is occurring in my brain and my body that's working. And I try not to, I'm not a religious person, so I try not too hard to really think very deeply about, what is this? Is this God? What is this happening, I just am very pragmatic, and I say it works. And I'm not a proselytizer. It worked for me. I know people who have come to me who have such severe PTSD that I've actually told them, you are not a good candidate at all for using psilocybin. And I would say, as a caveat, I'm treated by a psychiatrist, pain management group. I see MDs 3 times a week. I do not recommend that people that truly are trying to medicinally work with this do so without someone that they truly trust that they can talk with, and not your husband or your wife. My wife doesn't want to hear about all this stuff. So, yeah, whether it be a psychiatrist, whomever it may be, a psychologist, I'm just saying, don't just run out there and get mushrooms and say this is going to make you better. Because you can go in some deep, dark places, especially people who are being told you're dying. There's no reason you should be alive. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, great, thank you.
You're most welcome.
Appreciate it. And just an additive, it's refreshing to hear that your experience is changing the perspective of these clinicians in mainstream.
I think it is. Yeah, every one of my doctors and therapists know what I am doing, and every one of them approve of it. In fact, strangely enough, I was not using LSD, and I was told it might be a good idea to rotate now and then by my pain management team of all places. So.
Should be
Yeah. Hi. I want to kickstart this by saying that it's time that we get over this pseudophobia. We just legalized cannabis, and yeah, now it's time to look at the plant kingdom is full of so many medicinal herbs, and there's no reason why we should not be able to use them. My name is Cici Dunn, and I've been working in the hemp industry since 1999 in Amsterdam and in the US, and I've helped establish brands like Hoodlum Hemp Tailors, Hempworks, our lifestyle store in Amsterdam for 22 years, Hood Lab, our Denver agency. I'm also a partner at the Adam Dunn Show, which is a cannabis podcast dedicated to bring forward the truth about the cannabis plant. Being a do-it-yourself herbalist, I heal my family with plant medicine. And as a savvy, I would say you get a lot of epiphanies working with plants, putting your fingers in the soil, dealing with those microbes there. So, I was born and grew up in Stockholm, Sweden, with a mom that had a lifelong struggle with alcohol abuse. So when I was 16 years old, so after 30, from the age that I was 3 to 16, I lived in this alcohol abuse war zone, you could call it. I had enough, so I decided to pack my bags and move into my own apartment. I was 16 years old. For the 3 years after that, I only had two things on my mind. One was to finish high school, which was an immense struggle at the time because of all the circumstances. And the second thing was I just wanted to leave Stockholm. I had enough. It had become, at that point, it had become too emotionally heavy for me to stay in this city. So when I was 19 years old, I took my bag, one bag, and I moved to Amsterdam. But at this time I had also developed chronic PTSD after living in an abusive war zone for so many years. So at this time, I didn't label my issues as PTSD. This is something that I actually realized just a couple of years ago when I started putting together the dots. Although I have this psychology background, it didn't hit me thoroughly until a few years ago. And then around a few years ago was also when I realized that my early psychedelic use, or my early use of psychedelics had actually been very therapeutic to me, because it had helped me heal my trauma and create new pathways in my brain. In a sense, you can say that I had found my true essence, who I am, who I was, because it instantly made me feel calmer, happier, more at peace, more content with life, you could say. So a lot of my PTSD symptoms started to vanish. Then flashback to Amsterdam. PTSD often comes with many friends. So I had severe IBS. I had severe rosacea over my whole face for years on end. I had heart palpitations. I had different moments of deep depression. I could wake up in the middle of the night crying my eyes out for no reason. So even though I was removed from the war zone, in my mind I was still living in this war zone. So Amsterdam in the 90s was still the freedom city of, or the legendary city of freedom, where you could where they made a division between soft drugs and hard drugs. And I remember this was really one of the first things that I went there as a very naive Swede. I didn't know what cannabis or hemp was or anything like that. And I knew there were coffee shops. So that was kind of the introduction to Amsterdam, is that you learn about all these things. Oh, these soft drugs are legal here, and hard drugs. So they made a division, and the soft drugs you could find in one of the many head shops around town. You can buy them legally. Classified soft drugs was, for example, kratom or psilocybin, cannabis, peyote, and other sacred plants. And these, you could just go in and buy a slice of peyote, no problem. And then in 1999, I started working for my future husband's hemp store in Amsterdam. And this was also when I got introduced for the first time really about the cannabis plant too, and all its healing properties for human health and for our planets and what it can do. And this was also my real introduction to the psilocybin, because we actually sold them legally at the store. We had so many varieties: Ecuadorian, Colombian, the Hawaiians, the philosopher's stones. So it was around this time that I also started experimenting with psychedelics, and at the same time I started moving away from the legally accepted drug alcohol. And in particular, I experimented with cannabis, psilocybin, but also on occasion MDMA. And MDMA, and in those years, in Amsterdam was famous for, you could find the absolute purest and best MDMA, because the labs were actually in this country, and the good stuff was being exported to the rest of the world. So for you who don't know, MDMA is the love essence in an ecstasy pill, without the added attraction of garbage. So I always say, choose your drugs wisely. There's so many drugs out there, legal, non-legal, but choose the good ones. And I'm happy I did. With my dysfunctional background, I'm so happy that I still trusted my intuition, and I found the good drugs. And today I don't drink alcohol. I've given up alcohol completely to the universe. I'm not going to do it anymore. I don't smoke cigarettes for 7 years, ever since our son was born. I've never had any interest in man-made synthetic drugs or pharmaceuticals. I've never tried a pharmaceutical in my entire life. Could be because I'm European. They're not as common there. Of course, they exist just as much as here, but the use is not as common. So, and I've always put a very heavy emphasis on nutrition and plant-based food, plant-based diet, because I do believe that if you want to heal, if you want to heal with plants, you have to clean up your diet too. And with that being said, mushrooms is a superfood. That's how I see it. It's a brain nutrient. But there's so much more to the mushroom kingdom. Medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane, chaga, reishi, cordyceps, there's tons of them. As well as the magic mushrooms, they all contain powerful antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds that are called polysaccharides. And these polysaccharides, and specifically the beta-glucans, have enormous potential for health. I feel it's like the forgotten food group, and that we need to incorporate back more into our palate. You know? Thanks to the gourmet mushroom chefs, they brought them back somewhat, but the medicinal mushrooms, yeah. Anyway, I lost it a little bit there. The potential of these beta-glucans are enormous, and because they will help prevent and reduce the impact on chronic illness. They help with neurogenesis and the regeneration of neurons in your brain, and this is very specific to lion's mane. They can help increase they do help increase the white blood cell count and regulate the activity of the natural killer cells that scavenges the immune system looking for bad guys like viruses and bacteria. So just like within a living soil of an organic garden, mushrooms are protecting, bridging, and supporting the processes within our bodies and brains between the microbiome and the human cells. Paul Stamets, the leading mushroom researcher in the world, he is at this moment doing research on how to combine psilocybin and lion's mane, and that to me is true cutting-edge research. It's my PTSD that I need notes. So I always say that mushrooms, the medicinal ones, as well as the psilocybin ones, it's almost like the forgotten food group, and I advocate for anyone to start incorporating these into your foods more. And well, psilocybin might not be for everyone, but the medicinal ones are. And with the steady increase of the environmental toxin in our environment, and the upcoming, as well as the EMF pollutions, we're going to need this extra support and extra immune defense to help support and cope and evolve with what we have ahead of us. So as a plant-loving mom, I make sure that our family incorporates all the medicinal mushrooms. We drink the lion's mane and the reishi and the chaga in our tea and coffee in the morning. My son, he eats it in his popsicles, in his smoothies and chocolate. It goes very, very good with chocolate, actually. It's perfect combo, kind of. And in the future, we should be free to choose from legal psilocybin varieties as well. And today I can conclude that I've conquered most of my fears, except a few, such as public speaking and being in the spotlight like this. So, and the reason I wanted to do this was because I felt the calling. I have a lot of knowledge. I read a lot about mushrooms and health and nutrition and whatnot. But I really did feel a calling from the mushroom kingdom that I need to share my knowledge. So, and conquer this fear and create new brain waves or pathways in my brain. So thank you, Melanie, and the whole team for letting me share my story.
So I'm doing a double major. I'm doing microbiology and soil science. I really like to study psilocybin mushrooms, study and grow them someday. This is important to me because I use them to treat my PTSD, and they also help me quit drinking. And this December is going to be my 3 years sober from drinking. Okay, so I just want to give a warning that I'm going to be talking about sexual assault, and this is kind of hard for me to talk about, so hopefully I don't have a panic attack or something. But so it was about 3 years ago. I feel like I kind of have double PTSD, not only from being violently raped, but also from the way that the police officer treated me when I went to him for help. I was treated as a criminal, and I was told that I need to stop lying or else I'd be arrested. And then eventually I was arrested because they said I admitted to assault when I said I ripped out his hair. So this is something that I think about every day, and it is something that affects my life all the time. And I didn't fully start to heal until I started microdosing mushrooms. So my PTSD, it's like I will obsessively think about it every day, all day. It'll be the first thing I think about when I wake up, the last thing I think about when I go to sleep. I feel like I would wake up like a bolt of electricity through my body. It would just be like waking up and I just want to scream into my pillow and just not wanting to be on this earth, not trusting anyone, not feeling like I can have a healthy relationship ever again, and feeling so alone. And when I first started microdosing, it was the first time that I woke up without feeling like I didn't want to be on this earth anymore. It was the first time that I woke up and I was like, maybe there is something that I can do about this. Maybe I don't have to just be sad about this all the time. And I feel like mushrooms, they kind of, so like when my PTSD is really bad, it's like, that's all I can think about. I have this very narrow view on the world, and mushrooms kind of open up your perspective. They allow you to see other things. And I feel like the mushroom just allowed me to see that it doesn't have to be this way, and that I can use my pain to create something bigger, and I can use this to be stronger. And I feel like microdosing can be a good way to just get out of that loop of negative thinking, and to be able to do other things. Because when PTSD is really bad, it's like, I just want to lay in bed all day long and not do anything. But with microdosing, it'll let me reach a certain point where I can start doing other things. I can get out of bed, I can shower, I can do other self-care. And I don't think that psychedelics should ever be like, I feel like our society is kind of trained to think that we can just take a pill and everything's going to be better. And I don't think we can do that with anything, including psychedelics. Like, I think it definitely helps. It helps you get to a point where you can be healthy enough to start making other choices for self-care. So it should never be the one thing that you do, but it can help you reach that point where you want to do other things, that you can do other things for self-care too. So microdosing helps you get to that point where you can start doing other self-care, but then those bigger doses, they really show you, for me, they show me that I deserve love and I deserve to be able to heal from this. And I remember the last bigger dose that I did, I was just like staring at myself in the mirror and thinking about how much I love myself and just forgiving myself for everything that happened and forgiving this whole world. And that's hard to do when you're in this mental space of that's all you can think about, just replaying the incident over and over again. But that it just allows you to see that everyone deserves love, everyone deserves to heal, and just opens up your eyes to new perspectives and just allows you to see things from a different point of view, kind of. So I feel like it's kind of interesting, like the mushroom, it grows in darkness, it grows on shit, and I feel like it tells us that we can do that too, because I feel like my darkness and all my shit in my life is helping me grow into something magical. I feel like the mushroom teaches you that your darkness can allow your light to shine brighter, and our darkness is just as important as our light, and it has given me power to feel like I'm powerful enough to change this world, and I don't have to just accept these things. I don't have to just accept the fact that police officers can just refuse to take evidence, and that they can bully people and just put them in jail when they needed help. So I just find it interesting that law enforcement didn't care when someone tried to force something in my body, but they'll care enough to put me in jail if I decide to put something in my own body. I feel like both the war on drugs and rape denies a person the right to choose what goes inside their body, and I really feel like these mindsets are connected, and I really feel like if we dismantle one of these, it'll trickle down into other areas of life. Nobody deserves to have dominance and control over another person's body. This is my body, and I will decide to put whatever I want into it, and I make decisions for my body, and no one needs to tell me that I can't do that. I feel like the war on drugs is a war on sexual assault survivors, it's a war on people with PTSD, it's a war on people with trauma. Psychedelics saved my life. They helped me see that, they just helped me see a different perspective in this life, and I don't deserve to go to jail for using something that has healed me. I don't deserve to feel like my freedom could be taken away at any chance just because I use something that reminds me that I am a good person and that I deserve to be here. And so I just feel like if we end this war on drugs, that it will lead to other areas of society where we admit that people should have control over their own bodies, and the government has too much control if they think they should decide what we should put in our own body as grown adults. I'm a grown-ass woman. I don't need some government entity to tell me I shouldn't put something in my own body if I'm not hurting anyone else and it's only helped me in my life. So I'm so glad that this is happening in Denver. I feel like this is going to lead to so much other bigger things, and I'm excited to see where this goes, and thank you all so much for everything that you've done for
Hello, my name is Matthew Kale. I encountered psychedelics for the first time in 1995. I was a freshman in college, and I was introduced to cannabis and LSD, mushrooms, MDMA, and I dabbled in a little bit of everything. I didn't quite understand it at the time, but I had a lot of childhood trauma that I needed to deal with, and even though none of these substances I sought out for healing or for medical use, I ended up getting the healing anyways. And after a year of using them intensively, I actually tried to rebuild relationships with my family, who had kicked me out of the house when I was 16. I went to school without talking to them, and I didn't talk to them for a number of years, and I finally reached out to them and tried to patch it up and mend the fences, so to speak. Because of my interest in cannabis and psychedelics, I ended up studying neuroscience, and I spent most of my time researching the psychopharmacology of indole alkylamine and cannabinoids. So after my college experience, I didn't really use psychedelics again for a very long time. I went about my life in my 20s, and eventually I had a son, and I joined the military when I was 29, a little bit old. The military, I joined because I wanted to show my son that you can literally do anything. You could change your life 180 degrees at any given time. It was the last thing that anybody expected of me. And I didn't expect to be broken so badly by it. After my first deployment, I came home. There was a bit of a honeymoon period where everything was great. And 8 months later, I tried to commit suicide. I woke up a few days later in the ICU, and I went right back to work. And I pulled myself together mainly for the younger guys in my unit, the guys that were just coming in. I figured my combat experience would help keep some of them alive. And so I pulled myself back together again, and I deployed 8 months after my first suicide attempt again. This time it was a little bit worse. After a few months there, things started getting really bad, and eventually I was medevaced. I sustained injuries to my face. I lost a small chunk of my jaw, about a quarter size, up here in my upper jaw, and a lot of that's just fake. They patched me up pretty good. I mean, it looks okay. But I had facial fractures up on the left side, traumatic brain injury, cervical, thoracic, lumbosacral, spinal injuries, but the worst injury that I had was the PTSD. They put me on a huge laundry list of drugs. It was about 96 over the course of a few years. They just tried a bunch of different stuff, and at one point I was on 20 different medications every single day, including 3 opiates and 2 benzodiazepines, several SSRIs, SNRIs, neuroleptics, anti-seizure medications because of the TBI, and mood stabilizers, and then there were the drugs that they gave me to deal with the side effects of the other drugs they were giving me. And eventually my liver started to shut down. I got jaundice, and I was literally dying before everyone's eyes, and I didn't really want to live. And I ended up trying to commit suicide yet again. After that, I got out of the military, and I wanted to move to Colorado because I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try cannabis, but my wife wasn't really into it at the time. She wanted to go where she had a support network, and that was back in North Carolina. I went there, and I just circled the drain for a little while. It was horrible. I was eating more pills than I ever was, and abusing all kinds of things, alcohol included, and I eventually convinced my family to move to Colorado in 2013. I started using cannabis immediately, and I started peeling away the drugs one at a time. The first things to go were the opiates. I went cold turkey off those, and three different ones: 160 milligrams of OxyContin a day, morphine, and also roxicodone for breakthrough pain. And then after that was the Xanax and the Valium. I was on 30 milligrams of Valium 3 times a day. It was brutal. I was a zombie, complete zombie. I didn't have any kind of feeling. I didn't have. I couldn't maintain a conversation. I would literally fall asleep in the middle of my sentences, and a lot of what came out of my mouth was nonsense. And I was totally, completely absent from my family life. But when I started using cannabis, I started coming alive again because I was able to get off all the drugs. It took me about 1.5 years, but eventually I reduced it down to nothing except for a plant. The problem was, though, that I came out of the opiate withdrawal at the very beginning of my process. I came out of the opiate withdrawal with a $1,000 a month cannabis habit, and I mean, I used a lot in order. I was eating, I was taking oil, I was eating edibles, I was smoking it, I was vaporizing, and I was smearing all over my skin, just trying to get it in any way I could. It was a bit much, and I kept asking the question, you know, like, do I really need all this? And I tried to reduce my my dosage, and symptoms would come back, and I would have to go increase the dosage again. So I met the producer and director of a movie called From Shock to Awe, and they asked me in 2015 if I would drink ayahuasca on camera, and I told them I would do anything to fix myself. And that's how I came back around to psychedelics. I drank ayahuasca, and immediately I began to forgive myself, and I began to forgive everyone else in my life. I even began to forgive the people who would try to kill me. So I knew it could work, and it was just like, Jesus, this is going to be the ticket. This is really going to work. So I decided I had to learn absolutely everything about everything. And a month after that, I went down to Peru for a dieta for about a month, and then a month after that, I was in Mexico for ibogaine and toad, and a month after that, it was peyote, and then a month after that, I rediscovered mushrooms. And the first thing I realized was I had persistent migraines from the TBI, and when I took mushrooms for the first time, I didn't have a migraine for 3 months. And that just really changed my mind about a lot of things. And so I started using microdosing mushrooms, and 2016 was a bit of a crazy year. There was a lot of psychedelics, but I emerged from that year without a $1,000 habit per month of cannabis. And I could finally actually smoke it every once in a while socially and get high again. That's kind of fun. I founded a group called Veterans for Natural Rights, and it is founded to try to build communities where veterans can heal, find their voice, and then change the world. Because that's what happened. my personal journey was natural medicine, and then finally getting in touch with other people and connecting. And after that, I realized that I had a mission and that I wanted to change the world. So my mission since then has been to end the drug war, top to bottom. There's nothing about it that should be preserved. Everything from civil asset forfeiture to the actual prohibitions against drugs, the police practices, everything. It's toxic. It's like a cancer in our society. And so I've had a number of successes over the years, pushing for cannabis legalization and things like that. But I think this right here, the decriminalization of psilocybin mushrooms, this might be the start of something huge. And if Denver does this, we will literally be at the crest of the psychedelic renaissance wave. And so it has my absolute and full unconditional support. So with that, I think I'll just open it up for questions for all of us.
Yeah, I have a question. Veterans returning from war, very suicide details and things like that. Are there any initiatives to help towards access to them? So I know currently if you are a military vet and you come back and you're trying to maintain a security clearance, you cannot sign up for one of these amazing studies with great results. Are there any initiatives to change that or move forward with that?
There's been a number over the years. None of them has succeeded on the federal level. The fact is that cannabis and other natural medicines like mushrooms are still Schedule 1, and they have no medical benefit. So there is not really any option of access for veterans until they come off Schedule 1, until we just get rid of Schedule 1, because it's my firm belief that everything in nature has a use. We just have to figure it out.
I'll add to that just from my personal perspective as a non-veteran. I have tried to contact literally every type of study, maps.org, everyone across the board. And it's very ironic, as you speak, that if you still have military clearance, you can't get in these studies. I cannot get in these studies because I was not in the military.
This is a really important point, actually. You know, like everybody talks about veterans and PTSD, and we're kind of like the poster boys. But there's way more PTSD in civilian society. 22 veterans a day kill themselves, but there's 121 civilians killing themselves every single day. Not many people know that. And the vast majority of people that suffer from PTSD are women. More likely to be victims of assault, rape, you name it. And we're in the middle of an opiate epidemic. I think that 198 people are overdosing a day. So that brings the total up to 198 plus 121 is like almost 320 people a day dying from untreated trauma. And that's an epidemic. If 320 people a day were dying from any other cause, we'd be throwing billions and billions and billions of dollars at it. But unfortunately, nobody cares because victims of trauma and the people who try to medicate themselves, we're othered, we're stigmatized, we're pushed into a corner and sometimes thrown into jail. And that needs to stop.
Yes, thank you for your perspective. I feel like it's a human trauma problem, but you guys are on the forefront of like, people are more accepting and they understand a little more depthly how a vet can go through PTSD. So for the public, you guys are our outlet, or you know, that first line of contact kind of thing. Yeah, there you go. I mean, there you go. Yeah. But my question is, maybe in like a bullet point way, as someone who's on the forefront themselves trying to end this war on drugs. Besides us being part of the movement, right? So besides what we're doing right now, this push of education, change of perspective, do you have maybe a couple bullet points of things that we can particularly do in the way of actually taking steps to end this war on drugs? I know sometimes that can be hard to.
Number one, don't ever let anyone tell you that your pain is any less than ours. Straight up. People tend to put us on a pedestal, and poster boys, all this stuff. Everybody has a war in their own hearts, in their own streets, in their own homes. People have wars at home too. And I think that people minimize what they've been through and tend to think of war trauma as so much worse. But honestly, my war trauma just kind of broke the egg open, and out came all of this childhood trauma. There was everything became an issue. But I think that a lot of us are kind of already doing it. First thing is civil disobedience. Eat mushrooms. Eat mushrooms, find practitioners. If you need it guided, then absolutely seek out guidance.
So you're saying that one of our problems is too much civil obedience?
Yeah.
Can I paraphrase you by saying that? Is one of our major problems with society is too much civil obedience?
Yes, absolutely. That is one guaranteed way that you can support an oppressive and evil system, is to obey it.
Say no, right?
And civil ignorance.
But I feel that it's a war on drugs, but it's just as much a war on plants. And I feel we're fighting the chemical companies, because they're the ones that are behind all the pharmaceuticals. It's government, it's foods, big pharma. We need to think organic. Like the future should be organic in every way you can think about it. Take back your power when it comes to like natural medicine. Take back your power when it comes to the foods that make you sick. You know, ferment your own vegetables. Start growing your own. Put those fingers in the soil. And that's what I feel is the more people that will choose organics in every way you can, that will help working against these toxic companies that are ruining the world at the moment. Regenerative farming, yeah.
I just want to say that the best way to fuck the government is to grow your own food and medicine and use psychedelics as you wish.
Can I ask a question?
That's what.
I have found in the past that homeopathic remedies seem to work for me. And I'm wondering if anybody has ever tried to develop homeopathic psychedelics. If that would be a way to get around the legal issues and produce the same effect.
Yes, I actually wanted to link back to that too, because there's also a war on natural doctors. There's a war on natural medicine. And I mean, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we were relying on plants and nature to heal our bodies. Like all the nutrients are out there, but you can't make money off it. So yes, homeopathics, like you were like nature doctors.
No, I'm asking if anybody's tried to make a homeopathic LSD or homeopathic psilocybin.
I was so excited about this last one, but I always wanted to add that one. Maybe somebody else has a good one. answer to that one.
So, yeah, I'm thinking, I mean, if homeopathics work with other substances, why shouldn't they work with psychedelics? In which case, you're producing something that is not illegal but has the same effect.
I'm not familiar with anyone or any company out there doing something like this because of the Schedule 1. You know, that's really what the issue is that historically it's purely for racist reasons that marijuana in particular, as well as mushrooms, were put as a Schedule 1 to begin with. That's history. That is the reason it is what it is. Companies are scared of this. My doctors will not come out and say, we prescribe this to Chris. They see the results and they're like, this is amazing. We will go and speak about patient X, but please don't go on the news and stuff like that. So guess what I've done? I'm on the news. You have to speak up, you know, and I'm one who says, you guys are the one that told me I'm dying, so if I'm dying, I'm going out with a word, and I'm going to tell people the way it is. And like it or not, this is reality. And no one, as one of my co-presenters here stated, no one has the right to say you can or cannot put this in your body, anything. And I find it quite funny that the two substances that have worked, I believe, on all four of us up here are plant and fungus. It's already here. It does not have to be synthesized. So what I do know is that in growing my own, that's as homeopathic to me as I can possibly get, so to speak, in my own manner, because I know exactly what I'm growing. I have control over everything. There are no additives in it whatsoever. I know they are in phase 3 trials with psilocybin, which is a good thing, because if it does occur, that it passes, which I think it will, that means it will certainly come off the Schedule 1 list, but it's going to be at least 5 years before that were ever available in France. So that's not so good. Something needs to happen now. And that's why I am part of this movement here, because I don't live in Denver. I don't stand anything really to gain from this, but I want to be a spokesperson saying this works. It's not the panacea for everyone, but give it a try, because when they're seeing 80% plus success rates for chronic depression that cannot be treated, treatment-resistant depression, and we're seeing results. I am one example where my depression is gone. Completely. 32 years I had it, and it's completely gone. And I can't point to anything else except the psychedelics.
Yeah.
So there are groups that are looking at what that looks like and what the amounts are. And so if you want to talk to me afterwards,
Yeah, I guess just to finish my thought, I mean, maybe I'm glad somebody can relate to what I'm saying. Like, if psilocybin is legal in Holland, homeopathic psilocybin could be produced in Holland and shipped all over the world because it doesn't contain psilocybin. It contains an energetic resonance of psilocybin. So it could be produced and shipped and sold to avoid all the drug laws.
So,
Your line has been holding
oh,
in a
sorry.
line. That's okay.
To just, hi, my name's Eddie Harris, I'm 65. To just reinforce what Matthew was speaking toward, remember, PTSD is a very recent categorization of what your feelings and your emotions are. So if you were in the military prior to them discovering this category of PTSD, as a veteran, they won't even let you see your own records because of the practices that the military has already done, and that would create literally $1 million back pay for those people. The catch-22 is if you were on a military installation or what they call VA land or Department of Engineers in the South, where your levees are, that's the greatest place to harvest your mushrooms. It's been that way since '65.
Facts.
If you're old enough to remember, your parents didn't want to smell the marijuana. So in 1968, going into 9th grade, it was easier to do acid than it was to do anything. Mushrooms in 70s, 71, 72 in the South, was what you did to come down off the acid. And that's often forgotten. Cannabis just is coming into the acceptance now, but that's 40 years later. So please be patient, and most of all, create these types of environments where people can come outside of VA land, outside of government rule, and speak openly to what is happening. Because if it's saving any one of those 200 suicide attempts per day, let it be. Please understand this, and please understand that there are people that are old enough to remember when it was the rescue. It was not the enemy. In the days of 75, you were driven to a tent by some of the older soldiers that had already experienced going through mushrooms and say, okay, 13th on the left, you know what I'm saying, going the back way. So we've always been healing one another, but it's been a secret society. Now we're asking people to come forward from that secret society, and you're going to have some people that are going to be more hesitant than others. But please understand, this is nothing new. Just like this movement that they're doing, where they're putting the fentanyl on cannabis, everything that you put in your mouth, that's not new. This was the same thing that was done with cannabis when it was making this movement during the 70s, and they decided to put the PCP on it, and the horse tranquilizer and everything else. So please, understand that each person in this room right now is a timeless warrior for that exact freedom that she was saying about growing your own food, having your own healing sensation for yourself. Nobody, no doctor can heal you better than you can heal yourself if given the opportunity. So please, the cannabis movement is the same way. It's the only mecca, whether it be imaginary or real, that gives people that are in these rural towns and still getting roasted for roaches and that type of thing, or the smell of cannabis. A lot of the laws that they're coming up now in these new states are directed racially and pharmaceutically based so that they can keep giving us the pharmaceuticals. So until we get off the grade and understand that this is what moves people in medicine, not what they're doing in that $1 billion VA, you still got homeless people. What sense does that make? So think outside the box, because you're not in the box. You're in America.
Now, first of all, I want to say thank you so much to everybody who is fighting to make this a reality. The government wants you to believe that psychedelics and psilocybin are in the same category as heroin, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I really just wanted to tag on and speak about, also the guy who was talking about homeopathic ways of introducing psychedelics. There is a psychedelic that I have yet to try, but ketamine. they're actually introducing that and administering it to people in a medical environment. There is a place in Colorado that does it. So it's a start.
Yeah. Ketamine clinics popped up all over.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. It's a Schedule 3 substance.
Yeah, actually, so I've been undergoing ketamine and cannabis somatic psychotherapy now for about 8-9 months, and it's at Innate Path in Lakewood. They have a world-class team there. I take the ketamine by lozenge. It dissolves under your tongue, and they guide you through the experience. They guide you into your body, do somatic experiencing, which one of the presenters earlier was talking about, and it greatly enhances almost any substance out there, and they can actually use cannabis as a legitimate psychedelic experience. Completely changes the way that cannabis works. Most people use it for symptom control. This takes you to a whole another place. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. And ketamine and cannabis are the two things that are legal here. And as soon as psilocybin becomes legal, they'll be opening a clinic here in Denver too.
I have a question about military culture. First, thank you for your service. I taught yoga to vets with PTSD at a VA hospital for a couple of years. And you're talking about the difference between kind of being a veteran and having PTSD and then people that have current military clearance or are more active, which obviously they could benefit as well. And so the change obviously would need to come from within the culture, coming from people in leadership roles. But it kind of seems like the big stigma around all of that, right, is lack of control. Like you, in order to serve in these roles, you need to have your shit together. You can't be broken or have issues because that's a liability. And so how can we change that culture from within? How can we reach those people in leadership roles? Do you think that if it were possible to offer people in leadership roles a session with psychedelics, are they even open-minded enough to be willing to try?
Well, I'll tell you that the culture is actually changing already, and it's happening from not quite the leadership, but it's coming from the top. A lot of the people that are in special forces and stuff like that, Rangers, they're starting to explore this because the hidden truth in any kind of combat culture is that everyone has PTSD. Everyone. There's nobody that really escapes it. You can kind of like shut up about it and just kind of push it down and still function for a long time, but eventually it comes out. And almost every single person I know that was in combat comes out, and they may talk a lot of shit about, oh, I'm fine. I don't know, you're just weak. Well, 3 years later, they have a complete break, and they're gone. They're absolutely gone, and some of them end up killing themselves. So the cultural change is occurring right now, and believe it or not, I just did an NPR piece a couple weeks ago about cannabis use in active duty military. So people are starting to get the word out there, and people are starting to realize that this is a thing and that this could help.